it's so nice to see so many happy faces, and I'm happy to introduce this webinar for very important topic, because from my point of view, Digital Service Act, it is really the key legislation for building digital single market. We have 20 years old legislation in place, and really now it's crucial how we tackle DSA, because it will shape not only digital market in Europe, but I'm absolutely sure that if we do it in the right way, we set up standards for the whole world. The rest of the world will copy. So this is very, very important legislation. And I think it is also important because of citizens and because of SMEs. It is so important for our small and medium entrepreneurs, because if we make it right, at the end, consumer will benefit. So if SMEs provide better services, and if they have a better environment, at the end, only consumer can benefit. So it's very important that the rules will be simple, clear, and fair for everybody. And basically, there are three priorities, as we know. First one is to better protect consumers and their fundamental rights. So simply saying, the rules which are valid offline should be the same in the same way also online. So there must be some compatibility. Secondly, we have to establish a powerful transparency and clear accountability framework for online platforms. This is not still the case, but this is, I think, one of the crucial priority for this legislation. And thirdly, we have to foster innovation, growth, and competitiveness within our single market. And this is also particularly important for our SMEs. So from citizens' points of view, I do believe that the result will be to have more choices and lower prices. From a point of view of providers of digital services, they need some legal certainty and some kind of harmonization of rules. But for society at large, they need greater democratic control and oversight over systematic platform. So we know what are the objectives. We had already preliminary report at our IMCO committee, where we went through this quite in detail, and we had a couple of suggestions as well. Now, basically, work starts, and I'm happy that we can discuss this topic, because this is the really timeline, and this is just crucial legislations I mentioned for our future digital development. We live in a digital world, and we have to shape it. We have to prepare clear legislative framework where DSA will play key part. So thank you very much for attending this webinar. And now I give the floor to my very good friend and very good specialist in this field, Michał Boni. Michał, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ivan, and I welcome very warmly all panelists and first of all, the audience. I agree that this is a very crucial topic, and we have the special possibility in the European Union when we will make it and prepare some good solutions, because it can create the standards and norms for the global solutions. Yes, I think it's important. And after accidents on Capitol on 6th of January this year, the big discussion addressed to responsibilities of platforms has started again. So I think we are in the crucial time and focus on the crucial topic. What is especially important is also, as Ivan said, to focus on solutions which will be fair, clear, and simple, and support the digital development in the European Union. Especially with this, it is important for all kind of enterprises, also small, medium enterprises. And I think it's crucial from consumers' points of view, users' points of view, but small entrepreneurs also. And there are some points in the DSA proposal describing the exemptions for small businesses, and I think that we need also to consider it. Additionally, I think that it is important to find a solution which will be effective and supportive for business development, and on the other hand, with full respect to fundamental rights and civic rights and consumer rights. So also this is a very key goal. And I want to express one additional point, because if we want to have the solution which will be able to create global norms and standards, and if we want to create the solution which will be useful for all small, medium businesses all over Europe, we need to consider how to harmonize some solutions. Harmonization is a key word from my point of view, because it means that we need to focus, not as it was in previous time, e-commerce directive, we need to focus on regulation. Secondly, we need to focus on clear definitions, what is legal and what is illegal, and it should be similar in all European countries, because there are many differentiations between national solutions. We need to discuss about rules, standards, and principles for content moderation. It should be the same in harmonized way in the European Union. And of course, we need to work on common responses for harmful content which exists, disinformation, for example, and we need to have the solution which will be the same in all European countries and probably in the future globally. And of course, we need to consider how to implement this solution, because we need to avoid bureaucratic burdens. And on the other hand, we need to much more precisely describe the role of digital services coordinators functioning at the national level. So harmonization, standards and norms, this is very, very important for us, and the way in which we can create the area for small, medium enterprises development without redundant burdens. We have an excellent panelists today in our panel, and we will start with Arba Kokalari, member of the European Parliament. She is in IMCO, the shadow rapporteur on the Digital Services Act. And I want to put the question, Arba, to you, addressed to you, how the European Parliament should work effectively on that issues and avoid the competences conflicts, and how to create the stronger cooperation between IMCO, ITRE, LIBE, JURI. Additionally, what kind of timetable is necessary and what kind of timetable is possible, because we need this solution as fast as possible, but on the other hand, we need to assess the real situation. What are the key challenges from the perspective of IMCO? And I have heard that a member of European Parliament, Schaldemose, suggested that DSA should be the tool to integrate additional obligations for online marketplaces. Is it needed or not? What is your view? Arba, please, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Michal, and hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this seminar. I will try to answer all of your questions. First of all, the DSA, the Digital Services Act, is very exciting, and it's the first and sort of foremost legislation that will harmonize the digital single market, and it's we've been longing for this for a long time, I think, and it will create a more unified framework that will help European tech companies to reach new customers and compete globally. And so for me, I think it's good and natural that this is something that IMCO takes the lead on. But as in all legislations that we have in the European Parliament, they go into different committees and different competences. This happens all the time, and we manage due to that legislate. So I'm not afraid of it. What it's needed is that we work together as much as possible. At least that's my point of view. I will try to work as closely as possible with other committees and other colleagues, because I think there is a strong will from the European Parliament that we need to regulate and that we need to have legal certainty online on what's going on. I mean, everyone understands that competition laws is not enough, and the e-commerce directive, which is 20 years old, is not enough. It was made in a time where we didn't even have social media, and today social media is sort of the basic of the information flow, our democratic conversations, where we also sell products and buy products and sort of have our daily lives. Many hours of our daily lives is spent on the internet and social media. So it's really time that we do something. And I really look forward to getting all the input that we have from other colleagues and from many stakeholders. The timetable that you asked, well, I mean, I think the goal from the European Parliament is to have a vote by the end of the year of our EP position. And I think that is realistic, but we have several issues that we really need to tackle. First of all, the one thing that is very urgent and real right now is the massive spread of illegal content online, as you also mentioned, Michal. Many people are concerned, why is Facebook removing my account and I have no one to email or to call? Or some other people say, why is Facebook letting information which is horrible to be spread on the internet? So people get angry about that. So we need a sort of clear rules to sort of get some order in this digital Wild West. Secondly, we have unfair competition in the internal market online, where many companies, European companies that sell products online, who are committed to our common European rules of safety, environment, security, and so on, and where they are met with products flowing in from third countries who do not meet or comply with European laws, who are selling these products much cheaper and are basically destroying the competition. So we need to tackle that. And we also have to make sure that when we regulate, that we also respect fundamental rights of our consumers and citizens, because we are, as I said, much time of our daily lives are in the internet, and that's how we communicate. And if we regulate too much, then we might also hinder the freedom of speech for our citizens. So we have much things to balance, and it has to be a balanced and proportionate legislation, and that will take time to make sure. And we need to have impact assessments, and we need to listen to all stakeholders. So I don't want the DSA to be a legislation where people want to revise in 5 years. So we need to have legislation that will work for at least a decade as much as possible, even if the technology runs really fast. So that's the key challenges. And well, the biggest key challenges, all the key challenges, will probably be that, okay, if we want to remove illegal content online, it has to be removed quickly and permanently and effectively, but without making red tape or very disproportionate burdens on our businesses, or that we risk to that the platforms will do over removal of content, and then we will have problems as well. And this legislation will be not as we thought that it would be. The second very difficult thing to address is that, yes, we want to have a more harmonized digital single market, because we don't want 27 countries to do their own digital services acts. But we need to also preserve the sovereignty of member states to set their own laws. And what's illegal today, it's very differently in different countries. And I think it will be very difficult also when we discuss with or negotiate also with the council to sort of force a country that they have to change their constitution in able to comply with the Digital Services Act. I think then we will have more conflicts rather than solution in this. So, and your last question about my colleague from the S&D, the MEP from the Socialists, Sheldon Moser, who is the rapporteur for the Digital Services Act. Yes, as I said in the beginning, we have issues of the flow of illegal products in the internal market from third-party sellers and third-party platforms. And I think the suggestions from the Commission are in the right direction. For example, that the marketplaces, those platforms, need to have a legal representative in the European Union, and the proposal of know your business customer requirements. The thing is that good enough? Will that stop much of these flows of illegal products? I'm not really sure. I'm open to discuss that. I think we should see if we need to have even further obligations to the marketplaces to make sure, because I think this is something that will unite at least the biggest groups in the European Parliament, that we do not want to see illegal products that hampers competition or counterfeit products. So I think we should look into additional obligations, but I'm also very, very afraid that if we do that, we have to make sure that the burdens for smaller companies and smaller platforms will not increase. So you see, everything is about finding the right balance in this platform, and that we need to be sort of a bit moderate when we legislate. I don't think the Digital Service Act will solve all problems online, but I'm sure that we need to have some kind of basic rules and basic level playing field, which we are missing today. So yeah, that's all from me.
Yeah, thank you very much for the perfect presentation of dilemmas, yes, because I think there are some dilemmas, and you described it very, very precisely. And I think that we need to remember about the main goal to achieve right balance, as you have expressed very, very strongly. And also you added this question, which is discussed very strongly now, on illegal products, yes, and treating, for example, the platforms as importers. It's a relation to the trading and so on. There is a question addressed especially to you from Fabian Fechner, and look at the Q&A. And I think that after the first round, we will come back to some questions so you can answer. Thank you very much. We have a very good background for further discussion. And now I want to turn to Henna Virkkunen. Henna Virkkunen is the member of the European Parliament, of course, very active in ITRE committee, shadow rapporteur of DSA from the perspective of ITRE committee. How do you think, Henna, how to work cooperatively in the European Parliament on DSA? Because Arba presented the view from the perspective of IMCO, you are in ITRE, how to join some perspectives to achieve the best solution, and also how to make this solution future-proof. It is important to be open for innovative activities and innovative solutions. It means that the regulatory framework should be clear, fair, but on the other hand, not over-regulated, because over-regulation is very dangerous for the innovation. What are, from your, as a ITRE shadow rapporteur person, what are the priorities for small, medium enterprises, how they can use the platforms, and how do you assess the exemptions indicated in DSA proposal? Henna, the screen is yours.
Thank you so much, Michael, and thank you for Ivan for opening this important seminar, and thank you for Arba for her first presentation. I think this is, of course, when we speak about SMEs perspective, this is very important file, and I think now the main most important thing is that we have to really create a level playing field for our SMEs in Europe, and we have to have clear rules that what is illegal offline, it's also that in online, and especially now when we look what has happened during the COVID crisis, we have seen that e-commerce is growing very, very fast, and the people in Europe, they are ordering more and more goods from third countries, and especially from Asia. And it's not always that they are fulfilling the standards of European Union. We know that when the people are buying electronics or toys or textiles, they are not fulfilling the European criteria. And if our shops in Europe, if they are selling something that is illegal, it's quite clear that who is responsible, who is liable of that. But in internet, it's not always so clear. So I think this is very important for our SMEs and their competitiveness, that we are creating level playing field and making sure that we have fair competition and same rules for everybody who are operating in European markets. But I think when we now look from the institutional perspective in the European Parliament, how we will work with these files, I think, like I said, that, and many of you were already underlining that this file is extremely important piece of legislation, because it will now regulate the digital services providers and the market for years, and even decades, hopefully, to come. So it will affect the lives of nearly all EU citizens, as we know, in one way or another. Therefore, I think it's important that the European Parliament works very hard on these files and uses all the expertise available and pays very close attention to the ideas of European citizens and various stakeholders. And to achieve that, I think it's important to also involve all the relevant committees in the European Parliament and to make sure that all aspects of the legislation are truly considered. And while deciding on the DSA proposal, we have to find the right balance, like Arba already were underlining, between the legitimate interests and also the viewpoints. And I don't think that any committee can do this alone. And this is becoming more and more obvious to me while I have been now discussing with the different stakeholders. So I think it's very important that we are working closely. And of course, now I'm representing the view of ITRE committee. In fact, I'm the rapporteur on ITRE committee on this file, and we haven't made the last decision yet that who is the leading committee. And of course, in ITRE committee, we would like to say that we should have the leading role on that. Of course, our perspective is very much on the industry and research. They are the starting points. But I would like to also to know that ITRE as a committee has also general competence in the field of digital policy. So of course our perspective is very much on industry, research, innovations, SMEs, but also the whole field of digital policy, because ITRE is the ICT committee of the European Parliament. This is sometimes forget since it's not in our committee's name, but it's still very clear. So we will have a very wholesome approach towards this file. But of course, the expertise of the committee and the parts where ITRE can bring, I think, the most to the table specifically, they are relating to the industry and research aspects on this file. And the innovation part is very important for us. Michael was already asking that how we could make sure that this is future-proof, now this file, that we don't have to revise it after 5 years, like Arba said. And I think it's always maybe the most challenging thing when we are making legislation to digital field, because the technology is all the time developing so fast, and our legislation process is so slowly, and we should take care that we are not setting obstacles for the new innovations, and we should be very technology neutral and make sure all the time that we have very innovation friendly regulatory framework. And personally, I have felt during these 7 years when I have been in the European Parliament and working very much the digital files with them, that it's very challenging to make sure that they are innovation friendly and we are not setting obstacles for the innovations. And especially now when we speak about SMEs, because they are the backbone of our economy and they need to be able to benefit from this digital transition. They need a level playing field, like I was underlining, and fair competition rules. And I think these DSA and also DMA proposals, they can be very powerful tools to help this. But we have to make sure that we don't incentivize against growth. So it's also important to note that not all our SMEs are the same or have the same needs. To give an example, software or app entrepreneurs, they may experience spillover effects that negatively affect their business models if we get the regulation wrong. On the other hand, for many SMEs that are engaged in trade or goods online, the DSA proposal is very welcome, since it helps level the playing field with regards to companies operating in the single market but based in the third countries. So there's also very different situation in different SMEs. In the public A, we know that DSA and DMA, they have been mostly about regulating big tech, and discussion revolves around how these proposals address contemporary issue. This is, of course, I think important too, but it's easy to get stuck in this discussion. This is something we should avoid. We are creating rules not only for the current situation, but also for the future, like Michael was underlining. So for me, it's very important all the time that we look ahead when working on the DSA proposal. So we have to look at what are the technologies that are becoming major in the next 10 or 20 years, and how will they change the market and the way we use digital services. And of course, this is very difficult to know now. What kind of problems emerge and what problems are likely to disappear. And I think, for example, the case of GDPR, we see that not everything that was relevant when the regulation was proposed is relevant and the best way forward today. And on the other hand, we maybe need to react on some new developments. But if we always address the contemporary problems, we are always 10 years late. So we need to be very alert and work very hard as legislators to truly understand all the implications of the new legislation. So I think this is one of the most important things we have to pay attention now when we are working this legislation, that it should be really future proof and it should encourage the new innovations in the same time when we are setting the level playing field. And personally, I feel always that it's very challenging as a legislator to make this happen in digital field.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you. I think what is the most important is to consider how to make the level playing field for SMEs when we are discussing, because I see that very often the public discussion, public debate on DSA is focused on big tech, yes, and for some groups, for some people, this is the action against big text and so on. I think that we need to consider that this is crucial also for small, medium businesses. And as you have expressed very strongly, there are many economic relations of SMEs, also with third countries. So if we will create the norms, the standards, I think it will be easier to convince our partners from third countries. It will be not so easy with relations in some of them, but I think that we need to do this, because it will be also the new opening for the economic activity and the profits for small medium enterprises. Yes, so I think it's crucial. And also thank you very much for your clear view on innovation. And I think that this discussion between IMCO and ITRE, which committee will be the leading committee, will be solved. Yes, but as I have heard Arba and you, I think it's clear that representatives of both committees are very, very open for strong cooperation, thinking about the proper solution. We have the question from somebody from an anonymous attendee, but I think that could you show and analyze this question, and after, in the second round, I think that it could be interesting to hear your opinion, because this is a question on real involvement of small medium enterprises in the big debates led in the European Parliament. Thank you, Henna. And now we are turning to the position of the Council. We have Ricardo Castaneira. He is the Telecommunication and Digital Councillor under the Portuguese chairmanship of the Council. And I think it's a unique possibility to all of us, when we are discussing at the level of the European Parliament, to ask what are the priorities of the Portuguese presidency at that area, what are the key points to achieve, which presidency want to achieve at the work on Digital Services Act. And could you describe some tensions or common view on some issues among member states, because it's clear that some discussions are going on. Ricardo, the screen is yours, please.
Well, good morning. Thank you very much, Mikhail. Thank you very much for the invitation to have me here on behalf of the presidency of the Council. Let me, before answering to your specific questions, let me just make very brief remarks on what I've heard so far, because it's really, really important, because there are a lot of things that have been already said by the MEPs that really represents a strong common ground between the European Parliament and the Council so far. And this is, as a starting point, I think that this is very good news. If we take a look on the reforms that we did on copyright, on the AVMSD, even on e-privacy that we are still discussing, the positions were quite far apart since the beginning, which is not, I believe, the case right now. And this is a very important element. And I'm quite also positively impressed with the timeline that has been presented to discuss this proposal and to get the report, the IMCO report, voted by November of this year. It's quite impressive. And this is very important too, because timing is really critical right now on this aspect. Yeah. Timing is critical. We cannot take 3, 4, 5 years to discuss and approve this kind of legislation in Europe. Nobody would accept, especially the small and medium enterprises would not be accepted. Then there is also a strong geopolitical aspect on DSA. It has not been mentioned, but because it will be the first legislation to establish a regime of rules and responsibility for platforms, it is putting already the European Union, all of us, once again, I would say on the regulatory front line, with a view to promote exactly the level playing field that so many colleagues have already mentioned. And this is absolutely essential to all operators in the digital single market. Then what there is, and this is absolutely clear to us in the Council, because there is a risk which already started to happen of having a legal patchwork in Europe, with some member states starting with their own legislative solutions on several of the problems that have been identified and subject of the DSA. And this is a risk. That's why DSA regulation is absolutely critical to avoid that fragmentation, which in first hand would be absolutely a big burden to the small and medium companies too. Three aspects that are very, very important of that harmonization. First of all, the introduction of the principle of the extraterritoriality here. It was not, we don't have it in the e-commerce directive, but this, we have it on the DSA. This clause will bring a greater level playing field for European companies, of course, especially for the small and medium companies that are facing every day unfair competition from operators that do not respect European standards. And this is a very important aspect of the DSA too. Then there is also something important, which is the new set of due diligence obligations, but the Commission came up with a proposed gradual regime. It means that they've inserted a scale of obligations depending on the type and the size of platforms, precisely to keep this kind of proportionality principle throughout the text. And it is absolutely relevant for the SMEs, because we cannot treat an SME as the same way as we treat a VLOP, a very large online platform. That's why when we take a look to the catalog of the due diligence of the VLOPs, it's absolutely different than the SME. And this is something that it's also very important. Last but not the least, on something that it's also new, is related to the due diligence obligations, is that micro and small players, it means startups, the entrepreneurship movement in Europe, it's also carved out from the obligations applied to online platforms in general. That's what our section 3 of chapter 3 said to us. This is something that it's also very, very relevant. Regarding the Portuguese presidency, this is, I would say, not one of the priorities. This is our top priority. That's why we are really setting a fast pace. To give you an idea, on average 2 meetings per week on the internal market working party, which is a lot, as you can imagine. And our ambition is to have a full reading of the proposal done by May, to present a strong, consolidated, but very clear progress report to our ministers of competitiveness and economy during the Compet Council in May. And that progress report, the idea is to have 4 or 5 maximum bottlenecks or hot topics or controversial big things to be discussed and get guidance at the political level in order for the incoming presidency to get, I would say, to keep the track, and as the parliament, for us to try to get the general approach as fast as possible. We really recognize that this is really an important horizontal piece of legislation, and due to that horizontality, I can tell you that almost every week I've been invited to attend other working parties, not just from Coreper 1 but also Coreper 2, to explain what DSA is and to share our views on DSA. Because our colleagues from transatlantic relations, our colleagues from defense, our colleagues from justice, our colleagues from home affairs, our colleagues from copyright, audiovisual working parties, all of them, they are really involved on this kind of the negotiation. That horizontality is absolutely crucial, and we are, I would say, dealing with very different reactions from different working parties. And I just will identify, Michael, to your last question, what would be agreements on the SA between member states. Tell you that big, I would say, the elephants in the room, including or not harmful content in the scope. There are, I would say, big divisions on at the council on that. The second one is on the country of origin principle, which is a very important piece of the single market and also of the e-commerce directive. But nevertheless, some member states think that probably we need to mitigate a bit or take a different kind of look to the principle of destination, especially when we think about enforcement and especially when we think about combating piracy and combating counterfeited goods. And the third one, which I think it's quite in line with the Alex Saliba reports from the Parliament, it's on the Know Your Business Customer principle, which so far in the Commission's proposal is quite narrow because it just applies to marketplaces. And we know that some member states would like to broadening the scope of that principle. I would say that we have some other issues, but those three elephants, Michael, they are still in the room. Let's see how we're gonna manage it.
Thank you very much, Ricardo, for your perfect description of the situation. And I think one issue is important to avoid this legal patchwork, as you have mentioned, because it will be the risk, yes, for the whole solution. Secondly, you have expressed and emphasized the extraterritoriality area and problems. I think it's also very, very important, especially when we are discussing about economic activity of small, medium enterprises. Additionally, I think that due diligence obligations, yes, and the rules addressed to that problem is crucial. And thank you very much for this description of not only activity to meetings per week and so on, but on the other hand, to the description of some tensions between and differences between member states. It's normal during the procedure, yes, but I think that we need to focus also on this, how to integrate to the solution the problem of unfair content and how to what kind of attitudes we need to create. Also the problem of country of origin and principles addressed to the destination. Yes, I think it's finding the balance between this and proper description of some rules is very, very important. Thank you very much. And now we will turn to Marcin Nowacki, Vice President of Polish Union of Entrepreneurs and Employers, also the member of Economic and Social Committee, EXTOC, and I think it's important because you can present the view of business at this level, participating in many European discussions. In the context of debate on Digital Services Act, how to find the solution which will be fully implementable, especially friendly implementable for SMEs, without any redundant burdens, as some panelists expressed, and how to achieve the key goal, key objective of this regulation, order and platforms responsibility, limiting the big interventions, yeah, because there are interventions into the market. So Marcin, the screen is yours, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Michał. Good morning to everyone. First of all, let me say that we we welcome the DSA, and I am glad that the DSA is maintaining the basic principle of the digital single market, such as the country of origin principle. It really guarantees the freedom to provide digital services across borders. And just to remind our guests and people online, the country of origin principle says that enterprises can provide digital services in other member states under the laws of the home country. And this is really critical and important for the sector of SMEs. It removes the fear of applying foreign law in the case of litigation. Thus, the principle guarantees legal certainty. Although we see that so far the principle has not been challenged by the draft, we see some of the perspectives and also the approach to coordinators, which I personally find quite dangerous. I am afraid that the presence and the role of coordinators and possible intervention can really violate this principle and lead to disharmonization of rules. And let me refer here to the freedom of services in the EU, which in many ways is not working, and it is exactly not working due to different perspectives at the level of member states. And if we put too much attention to coordinators and we give them the competence to enforce compliance with the member states law, it can be really dangerous for us, for small companies, because then the concept of harmonization might be lost. And we see in many other markets at the EU that protectionism is still here. I mean, it's even more and more popular in many ways. And I'm afraid coordinators might use the force and the power to implement some of the laws in the way to really protect the markets. And this is really dangerous. Please have it in mind later on. With regards to the discussion on legal representative, we also welcome this point and this obligation, but I am very skeptical about it. Now, today, a lot of products and services from China do not exercise any consumer rights in the EU or member states level. I don't think that the obligation to have a legal representative will change the attitude. I don't think it will happen at all. And in many ways, we think of the DSA as a way to somehow provide or guarantee level playing field for European companies in opposition to large American companies. But we really forget that there's Asia and specifically Chinese players extremely active. For example, in Poland, the second largest player in terms of e-commerce is a Chinese player, and the dynamism here is much higher than for other players. And I don't think the attitude will change with this regulation. We need to think of stronger ways somehow to enforce the law at member states level and the EU level. In terms of harmonization, I agree with Michal that this is critical for us, for European companies, to have harmonized market, especially, as I said before, as we experience other market services at the EU level, with strong presence of domestic laws, licenses, and regulations. Here we really want to have harmonized market, and therefore we are very much in favor that this is the EU regulation, and you're keeping it this way, and that we're not going into another directive that is implemented in a different way at the member states level. So again, just good job and good approach in terms of the legal basis. Yeah, that's I think that's it for what's critical for us. And again, please look at coordinators and limit the way the power to influence the market domestically. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it's important, and I think that we need to take into account your suggestions and look carefully for the role and position of digital services coordinators, because it's indicated in the proposal, but I think that it requires much more stronger and deeper analysis. Also, you have expressed the threats or dangers related to the legal representative model and issue, and also how to tackle the problem of presence many products from Asia, from China, and the role of platforms, especially platforms by which also small medium enterprises are working and trading. Yes, how to ensure the full respect to the consumers' rights. Yes, it's not an easy task. Yes, and on the one hand, we want to create the global norms and standards, but on the other, it's not so easy when we are talking about European and China relationship at that era. And thank you for emphasizing this role of harmonization, because it is crucial for all businesses, especially for small, medium businesses. Just one information for all of you: look at Q&A session, because there are some very interesting questions, and I think that we will have time at the second turn, the second round, to come back to those questions. And now, last but not least, panelist Victoria de Posson, Senior Manager Public Policy from CCAIA Europe, very active at the area of presenting the view of companies involved and active for digital development. And I think it's important to talk also about the problem of right balance. It was expressed by Arba and Henna, right balance between the fight against illegal content, different kind of illegal content, and ensuring online trust and safety, as well as protecting the fundamental rights like freedom of speech. Yes? So what is your opinion? What is your suggestions when when you are looking at the proposal, and how the Digital Services Act solutions could be implemented. Would we need liability issues, enforcement models, and how it should be implemented without interfering with business development, because this is also crucial. So, Victoria, the screen is yours, please.
Thank you so much first for the invitation, and I'm going to just say a few words. So the Computer and Communication Industry Association, CCIA, represents a range of large but also small European and international technology and communication firms. I was very pleased to hear the previous comments. I think we agree on a lot of elements. So for instance, MEP Kokalari and Virkkunen mentioned to have an evidence-based and future-proof tech-neutral approach, totally aligned with this. We really would like to have the DSA to ensure strong consumer protection, support innovation, avoid administrative burden for SMEs and protect fundamental rights. And then couldn't agree more with what Ricardo and Marcin said on a strong harmonization and avoid having a patchwork of national initiatives and welcoming that extraterritoriality scope and provision. So CCA really believes that the Digital Services Act is an opportunity to create a better functioning EU digital single market, provide clarity on everyone's responsibility, and safeguard online rights. So to your first question on how to ensure the right balance between the fight against illegal content while ensuring online trust and safety and protect fundamental rights, I'm gonna answer you in 4 elements. So first, the DSA should be one set of EU rules that tackles bad behaviors regardless of where they take place, and which encourage tech companies to take voluntary action while safeguarding online rights. So the first point was mentioned already. So it's really that some member states have already started to develop their own national rules. And when we understand their concerns, we believe that action at EU level would be most effective to tackle illegal content, product, activities, and services. A harmonized framework would also support SMEs to more easily scale up in the single market rather than having to comply with maybe 27 legislation. The second point is tackle bad behaviors and not the size. The DSA should tackle illegal behaviors regardless of the platform size and country of origin. We believe that having a very specific regime for very large platforms with additional obligation just encourage rogue players to proliferate among small digital service providers and that are subject to fewer requirements. So just shifting the problem from one place on the internet to another. And we saw this, for instance, with terrorists from ISIS switching to the social media connecting. A threshold would also disencourage European digital service providers from growing and becoming very large to avoid administrative burden. So to tackle this problem, we believe that to build online safety and strengthen trust, the DSA should be proportionate and principle-based. So that doesn't mean that SMEs and large platforms have to comply with the same requirement necessarily, but that they would be proportionate and principle-based. The third point is to extend the scope of voluntary own investigation to terms and conditions. So we welcome Article 6, which allows intermediaries to take voluntary own investigations without being penalized for the good faith effort. And we think that we could even go a step further to ensure online trust and safety by extending this scope to voluntary own investigations aimed at enforcing intermediaries' terms and conditions. And I agree with what has been said that it needs to be very clear what's illegal content and what can be done online to ensure online's fundamental rights. The last point will be to keep the ban on general monitoring. There is a consensus, but nevertheless, there are some challenges. So we would invite the Parliament and the Council to clarify that regulators do not have the authority to include a monitoring or stay down requirement as part of the mitigation risks. So to sum up to your first question, the DSA can work for SMEs and hopefully will enable SMEs to grow if it's one set of EU rules that tackles bad behaviors regardless of where it takes place and which encourages tech companies to take voluntary action while safeguarding online rights. To your second questions on enforcement and implementation, I think here we really, and it's been said already, that the country of origin is really important because it's key to creating a harmonized single market in Europe, and it avoids unnecessary administrative burden, especially for SMEs. So we welcome, why not, stronger cooperation between national authorities, and we really welcome the DSA digital service coordinators, main point of contact, because this will extremely facilitate the relationship between the industry and national authorities. However, there are many questions left. So, for instance, we would invite policymakers to ensure legal certainty, to clarify the purpose of the cooperation, the processes, the mission statements, the area that are covered, and under which circumstances. So that's quite important. And then to the last point about the penalties and the fine, there are also some questions left there. So we believe that the DSA penalties and fines should be proportionate to the risk involved, and that a fine should be considered for systematic violation on a specific DSA provision. So in a nutshell, if I may conclude, we very much look forward to work with policymakers, Parliament, Council, and to have that multi-stakeholder approach to make sure that we have, through the DSA, a functional EU digital single market, provide clarity on everyone's responsibility, and safeguards online rights. To make the DSA work for SMEs, it's very important to have an EU single set of rules that tackles bad behaviors regardless of where they take place, encouraging tech companies to take voluntary action, and safeguarding online rights. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Victoria. I think it was very inspiring, yes, and you have mentioned how important are the solutions which will be future-proof, evidence-based, and you have presented the view that DSA it is an opportunity, but you have also, if I properly heard and understood, said that there are some requirements. There should be some requirements to tackle by behavior, not only by size. Yes, I think it's crucial. Yes, it's crucial because it's you know, at the beginning of the discussion of the ESA, it was clear. Okay, we will discuss about big platforms. Yes, but if we will be much more focused on behavior, I think it will be clear to describe and also find the legal language, what kind of requirements should be put into regulation. Yes? So thank you very much for emphasizing this. And also I think that you have mentioned the role of digital services coordinators. This is a real problem. I remember firstly as a Minister of Digitization in Poland, after that as a member of the European Parliament, our debates on GDPR. And it was crucial to find the proper solution and proper description of the functions and roles which could be played by national institutions, yes, and institutions responsible for the implementation and keeping the GDPR. We will have the same problem because there are many different habits in different countries. There is no experience, institutional experience, especially in that area of the coordination of this Digital Services Act. So I think it should be described much more precisely, or some kind of guidelines should be prepared during at the same time parallelly to the work on DSA. So we have many thoughts presented by you, all panelists. Thank you very much. It was a great, and I think it also showed that the cooperation between members of the European Parliament and representatives of Council and stakeholders should go on, yes, because this is this is a possibility. This is a opportunity to find the most effective solutions. We have 20 minutes for some questions and answers from your point of view. We have a question done by Fabian Fechner on addressed to Arba. So I will ask you to answer for this question. This is also the question focus on securing and solving the problem by using 5G. I'm not sure if it is the time for discussing, because it's a separated big problem. Yes. Also, it was a question done by anonymous attendee on involving to the discussion in the Parliament genuine European SMEs actively engaged in DSA and DSM. So on the one hand, Marcin, I would like to present your view, and on the other hand, it is question addressed to Henna, for example. And we have a question presented by Francesco Versace on the way how to, in a speedy and effective way, tackle illegal content. I would like to ask for the opinion. I'm not sure for whom I should address it. For example, for Ricardo, is you agree with this? And also, it was a question on trusted flaggers. Yes, so probably Ricardo, if you could answer, it would be great. And this is the question put by Andreas Aktudiankais. So if I hope that we can address this question to if you agree to Victoria. So, but by the way, it doesn't matter. I think that this is the final round of our discussion. So you can build relations to the questions in your responses, but also I'm asking you for the final comments of our discussions. We will start with, if it is possible, in reverse model. So Victoria, could you start now?
Thank you so much. I think there's been a lot of questions and a lot of points, and maybe one element that I haven't been mentioned, and it's the objective of platforms to work hand in hand with policymakers. There's definitely been a shift this last 20 years with new services emerging, and really willing to work to make sure that consumers are safe when they go online, that business users can grow, and that there is fair competition, regardless of where the product is coming from. So that's why we welcome so much that extraterritoriality provision. Maybe some point on transparency. I think it's very important, and we have to make sure that consumers understand how the internet works and that the rules are clear. And it's a question, again, it's a long discussion, and the devil lies in the details, but it's finding the right balance and equilibrium between transparency requirements without giving too much information that could allow bad players to gain the system, and while entering trade secrets. So I think that's maybe two points that I also wanted to make, but we very much look forward to make sure that we find the right balance, that we ensure consumer protection, safety, that we have clear rules, because those are important for the tech industry, for SMEs, but also for national authorities, which will have to enforce the legislation, and that's going to be quite challenging. So we very much look together, we very much look forward to working together to make sure that all those rules are clear, and that we have a future-proof legislation that could be as effective as the e-commerce directive was, and maybe let's have DSA 3.0 in 20 years. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Victoria. Thank you very much. Now, Marcin, please, it is your turn.
So first of all, about the division of into large and small companies. I don't think that this division is a good way of describing the market. It doesn't describe it properly. We need to be able to name openly and to be very vocal about it. What are the interests of specific players, even by name? It's not that difficult to name large players and to be vocal about their interest. But at the end of the day, each market should be assessed in terms of the competition, whether it stays competitive and open, and it should be also assessed in terms of the effects on the consumer, because finally the consumer is the one or the group we want to make sure is protected and has an access to competitive open market with keeping consumer rights and all the regulatory framework. So let's name the interests of specific groups and then create a framework. And I think here within the DSA, the interests are really properly named, and also obligations. So there is some division of obligations, and that is based on resources and competences for large platforms and small or medium-sized companies. We also need to remember that a part of large international platforms, we also have very strong domestic players, and there's nothing to be afraid again, and to name it, that some domestic players are also trying to keep at the member state level to keep the market closed. There are some monopolies and large important players that are lobbying for their interests. And again, naming by name those monopolies, those players, is important, and it's nothing wrong about it. As long as we are open and clear about the aims of specific companies, we will understand it better. And at the end of the day, consumer will be protected and will have an access to competitive market. And that also relates to China. I mean, from the consumer perspective, the trade and services from China are great, as long as she or he doesn't have to go and, for example, send back the product, because then it doesn't work at all. You can't really do it. But the feeling is that, you know, an access to those products at this price is great. But we are not aware of some other consequences and results of this not fair competition. So again, to summarize, the division into large and small is not always that easy. It's more complicated. I remember from my market and telemedicine, I used to be involved for many years. Using large platform was a great way for my company, for myself, to compete with large corporations. So thanks to some platforms, small players have ability to compete with large, strong corporations, and without search engine or some media platforms, that was very difficult because the threshold to enter media campaigns or advertisements was really high. It was very expensive, and we couldn't afford it 20 years ago. So in many ways, platforms help us as long as they don't kill their clients. So that as long as they don't use the power and the data they have to compete with us as their consumers. So this is, I think, critical, and this is a way to look at the market in general. How to keep the development of European global platforms, but in the way that they cannot use the data and the force to compete with companies present on a specific platform. I wouldn't be afraid. That was the statement of Hannah, that we don't want to have a revision after 5 years. As I look at the GDPR, I think that some assessment of consequences regarding specific packages and regulations is not a bad idea. I think we should do this with GDPR and the effect, the results, especially on medium-sized companies. I know there is the report of the European Commission about it, but somehow it wasn't. It is not public, and I think we could think of a proper assessment of European regulations after a couple of years. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Marcin. I think it was very inspiring, especially when you have mentioned this problem of naming interests. Yes, I think it's the open way, so we can continue in the future the discussion on that issue. Now, Ricardo, please present your final comments and also your comments addressed to some questions.
Thank you, Michael. I will go directly to the two questions that have been raised by the audience, starting with Francesco. It's a very important point that he made, but it's also important to note that for the very first time, we have a definition on online platforms. It is in the DSA proposal that defines that these operators as those intermediary services that host content and disseminate it. It means that it's a very similar concept like we do have on copyright, the communication to the public, right? And it means that this is a very important aspect because it recognized to some platforms that, especially to the largest ones, as public spaces, which also justify some very specific obligations. And this is, in my view, important also to note that although the proposal does not provide for stay-down mechanisms, and probably, Michael, it will be the fourth elephant in the room, probably.
It does not, I agree. Yeah.
It does not provide for stay-down mechanisms yet, or very specific timeframes for removal of content. We also see that there are some member states that probably will insist on these points. In any case, there is also important to note that there is an harmonization on notice and action, which together with additional obligations to some platforms, it's also a very important step forward in the way to, I would say, combat especially illegal content and counterfeited goods or piracy. Those are very important aspects too. On the second question, on trusted flaggers, this is something that it's new in the DSA, and the trusted flaggers, they have for sure a very important role for detecting illegal content. However, probably the provision, and that's the question, probably this provision will be subject of additional discussion, because it only provides for the status of trusted flaggers from some very specific entities. It means it is probably still too narrow, I would say. It has been also tabled as a good subject for discussion, and probably we could see it in a different way, broadening, I would say, the scope of the rule in order to include some other entities that have already extensive experience in this regard to combat identify counterfeit products and also pirated content. I agree that this is also something that for sure we will take on board to be discussed during the upcoming months. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ricardo. This is also some thoughts for future analysis and consideration. And now, please, Henna, the turn is yours.
My turn, is it? Yeah. Yes, thank you.
Yes, yes.
Thank you for all the speakers and also for the questions. Now, when I'm thinking this about the SMEs perspective, especially, I think one part what we have to really closely now assess is really now the definition of online platforms and the different services and the size of the companies also. That we have really that kind of regulation that doesn't set obstacles for our SMEs, and we should avoid red tape, and we shouldn't create too much administration for the small players. So I think that is something we have to look now very carefully when we start to work with this file, that are all the requirements and obligations what we are setting to different services, and how we are grouping the companies, that is it fit for purpose. And there was also asked a question about SMEs, that how we can make sure that we will hear them during the process. And I think it's very important point, because of course Commission was having big public consultation on these files, but we know that it's often the bigger companies and associations who are taking part of this. So often SMEs, they are not aware of what is happening in the European level. And it's something that where we have to be very active also as a members of parliament, and also SME Europe and different associations to raise the awareness among SMEs, that they know what we are planning. And in the way, I think it's quite challenging now for the SMEs, because we don't have normal meetings or seminars, physical meetings. So we don't have that kind of informal contacts so much. But in the way now, when we are working in internet and these Zoom and Teams webinars, in the way it's also more equal for the SMEs, because now they have better opportunities to take part. For example, I'm coming from Finland, and it's a big step for Finnish SME to come to Brussels and to take part to some kind of seminar. But now they have also more equal opportunities. So when we are working in webinars, that they could also take a part to hearings and give their perspective. And I think this is something what we are going to work together with ARBA also during this process, and we will organize also hearings together for SMEs, because it's a very important part of our stakeholders. And then I would like to also a little bit touch the point of trusted flaggers, because I think it's very interesting new element, and many of the stakeholders, they are a little bit now wondering that what it could mean. And for example, the media companies, they have been proposing that, for example, those media companies who have journalists who are committed to ethical rules of journalists, they should have that kind of special status, for example, on the platforms, and even so special status that their content couldn't be removed from the platforms. And of course, this is, for example, something we have to think that when we speak about serious journalism, where it's high quality, should they have, for example, special status? Because it's also, for example, possible that they are writing very critical articles about this platform, which are having a very big power in our society. So I think these trusted flaggers and the role of different stakeholders, that is something also we have to assess very carefully.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Henna. And good luck during the work and cooperation with SMEs also. And now, Arba, please, it's your turn and final comments.
Yes, thank you, Michal, and thank you all the other speakers. Firstly, I got the question about should the marketplace platforms have importer liability, as it was discussed yesterday, where Margaret Vestager said if we had importer liability, then we will not have any platforms. I would say this, it depends, because it's very, I mean, we cannot say that all of these marketplaces are the same. The thing is that the current proposal from the Commission, Know Your Business Customer principle, is good, but we need to have a clarity on that principle, because I'm not sure that it will become easier for consumers to enforce their rights against sellers. Will big platforms like Amazon really have control of all of their sellers? Who are they? So consumers can be sure that they are not being, they're not buying a dangerous product, they're not compatible with EU law. I mean, I'm afraid that will be very vague. So I'm not, I'm saying maybe we should look into that, how we can introduce additional obligation. Exactly how, I'm not sure yet. It has to be analyzed, because if you introduced also importer liability for a smaller platform, say marketplaces that sell, where the seller is a consumer or a private person that sells secondhand products, you cannot have that kind of liability for that kind of platform. So it really depends. So in my final remark, I just want to say that the most important things, I think, for the SMEs is that we as legislature make sure that we minimize unnecessary bureaucracy, because that makes it very difficult for European companies to compete globally, to ensure that we have harmonization, because it will be much easier for SMEs if we do. And in the DSA, that we safeguard the country of origin principle, which is very appreciated among SMEs and companies in general. And last but not least, that we have a strong enforcement on EU legislation, because that's also a very problematic thing, that we have laws, we have beautiful laws, but it's not always implemented well. And when I said earlier about GDPR, the concept of it is fantastic. I mean, it's good, it's really needed, but the problem has been the implementation, which has been very bad. And I agree with Marcin that we need to revise the GDPR, because it has become a bureaucratic disaster for many companies. I was myself working during the implementation time, before I was an MEP, I was working in 2 different companies where I saw how difficult it was for them to implement the GDPR. And it was, one of them was a big multinational company, and the other one was a medium-sized companies. So, and I know that startups have very, very hard to even, look into the GDPR. So we have to make sure that when we legislate Digital Services Act and Digital Markets Act, is that we do it right from the beginning. So we don't need to revise it in 5 years. And so that we have all aspects, and that it doesn't create a new lots of red tape for the smaller platforms and smaller businesses. And with that, and that we have to realize that more and more much more from our economy is becoming services. Companies that are selling goods are become serviceized, and we have to understand that, and they are doing it online. And last but not least, one thing in the Digital Services Act that we haven't mentioned which I think might become a conflict as well, which is also bad for SMEs, is that the thing about algorithm in advertising. There are some people in the European Parliament, maybe not from our political group, but I can say the Greens, for example, who want to ban targeted advertising. And I think that's really, really bad for SMEs, because it's cheaper for them to buy, put their money on targeted advertising. It creates better advertising for consumers, puts down the costs for SMEs. But at the same time, doesn't mean that we cannot do anything about it. People are asking about how are the algorithms in the platforms working? How can we make it more transparent? We need to make sure that consumers have more access to the information and the data that is being used when advertising is targeted, and that they have a better possibility to opt out if they do not want a specific advertising. But I think that's a thing that could be a dangerous thing when we have negotiations, that the Digital Services Act cannot lead to a total ban on targeted advertising.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Arba, and thank you very much to all of you, and also to our audience and those people who put the questions, and thank you for your, as panelists, answers to those questions. I think that it is very important to understand how complicated and important is Digital Services Act. So thinking about some conclusions, I would like to say that we need to focus on the right balance between regulation and innovation, and also in balance between various interests. We need to focus on harmonization as broad as needed and possible, because it is especially this harmonization important also for SMEs. We need to keep the special attention on SMEs, and also think about level playing field, because it's the possibility done in this proposal. We need to focus on consumers' rights and create the background for their possibilities to respect their rights. On the other hand, to create redress mechanisms, because also it will be important. We need to discuss much more precisely and better describe the role of digital services coordinators. It was raised during the discussion. We need to define in the broad sense the extraterritoriality issue, because there are some problems and probably troubles. I think it's also important, it was the last point of the Ricardo comment, find the proper solution for the notice and take down model, because I know these mechanisms, and from the very beginning of e-commerce directive, there were many troubles with this. So I think that now it's time for finding the most proper solution. And finally, I think that we need to consider, working on the Digital Services Act, that this is the opportunity for playing the role of setting rules in the global dimension. Yes, so this is a big challenge, and I hope that we will keep it, and we will be successful. Additional and finally, I want to say and ask our colleagues and Ivan and SME Europe that probably it would be great in June, for example, when it will be the clear wrap up of the Portuguese presidency. And also I think that many works in committees will be advanced to organize the the next meeting, if it would be possible to invite all of you in the same composition of people, yes, because I think it would be very interesting to look and to see how things were changed, for example, from February to July. So this is the final idea on this panel. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you, SME Europe, for organizing this meeting and panel. Thank you, Ivan, for inviting all of us, and have a nice day and have a nice afternoon. Thank you very much.